Nick a little bit.
Hey, we're here with Mo Hallaba from Datawisp, and we're going to talk about how product managers use data to make better decisions, or maybe how sometimes they don't use data. But
More of
before
that
we
one.
more of that one.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, welcome to the show, Mo, and why don't you just give us a little bit of introduction to yourself?
Hey, Tom. Thanks so much for having me. Happy to be here. So I'm Mo. I started my career in on Wall Street, actually in equity research. Did a number of different jobs within finance. I went to M&A, focusing on banks, and then eventually got into entrepreneurship. I started my own company because I kind of got tired of the banking life and. Um, Ended up in data and analytics through detour in gaming. So I was big into games, and much like in pro sports, you track a lot of data and stuff like that. I got into the data and analytics part of video games, and that got me really interested in learning more. And then we started working with a bunch of big gaming clients, and then eventually we realized there was a big opportunity outside of gaming for easier analytics and more accessible data. So that's kind of where I got to where I am now.
I have two teenagers in our household, and one of them is big into Fortnite.
Mm,
And I'm always impressed when I see him playing it because I'm like, wow, that game has been popular for so long. I'm
hmm
curious as someone who worked, in the gaming industry, like what is it that they got that Halo and Call of Duty couldn't figure out? Like why is Fortnite has such staying power?
It's fun, and it is constantly being like refreshed with
Mm,
the new IP
season.
that they
Mhm.
through collabs and stuff. And then they've also done a good job with the creator side of it. So people, so when you think of Call of Duty versus Fortnite, right?
Mhm.
Fortnite is open, so you can make your own stuff. Call of Duty is not. Um, and then Fortnite, the IP available in the game is way more interesting than Call of Duty, because Call of Duty basically has their own IP, and then occasionally they're like, yeah, here's a Nicki Minaj skin, right?
Mhm.
Or here's a Snoop skin, but very limited on that. Whereas um, with what they've done with Fortnite is tremendous. I mean, sports teams, they've got Goku, they've got Darth Vader, they've everyone is in that game. So
Yeah. It's super impressive. Kudos to that team. Well, tell us a little bit more about how you decided to start Datawisp. You mentioned that as part of the gaming stuff, you realized that this had much broader applications. Can you share more?
yeah, absolutely. So, what we ran into a few times was just that there was people that needed access to data or that needed insights from data, and they weren't able to get those insights themselves. So, like one of the first instances of this was we were working with a broadcasting team, like in professional esports,
Hmm.
and they would say things, stats about the players to keep it interesting, the way that you do in sports, and even in pro sports these guys are sitting there with like these papers full of notes about every single player, about things they can say during pauses, stuff like that, and they're not able to come up with that on their own. There's like a data person that's like feeding them this stuff, right?
Hmm.
And so we were that data person. And so I remember for one match we calculated which player had spent the most time crouch walking around the map, and like the total distance traveled crouch walking, and they use that as like a funny bit, and but someone had to do that for them, and
Hmm.
otherwise they wouldn't have been able to do that on their own. And so this was like the one of the first cases, and then later we did a big consulting project for like a top game developer, and we worked with their data science team, and they had very, very clever people, but there's just so much demand for analytics and for numbers that they can't always keep up necessarily. So we noticed a pattern of, hey, people are always sitting around waiting for data, or they're making decisions not based on data because of this big bottleneck. So we thought it was something that we can solve.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that situation where even when we had access to pretty large data science teams, um, well, number one, they were looking into lots of things and there was a long backlog. And
Yeah.
then even if they were like, okay, yeah, we can take this on, you may not hear back for like a month or two.
Well, that's the thing,
Yeah,
it's a queue, right? So
yeah.
when you go to Starbucks and you order a venti latte or whatever, it doesn't just pop up on the other side, like, there's a queue and your drinks get made, and when it's busier, you don't get your drink immediately, and it's the
Hmm.
same kind of with data science at most companies, because there's just very few data scientists, and kind of everyone needs them in a way. So whether
Hmm.
you're in marketing or sales or product management or whatever, everyone needs stuff that they do.
Yeah. So how does Data Wisp help with this problem?
So the biggest problem is kind of like the bottleneck of data science. And what it is that data science, or just forget about like big complicated data science projects. If you just want to look up something,
Hmm.
how many people bought this item that we have in our store, right?
Hmm.
Or how many people use this feature that we have in our app, because I'm decide that requires some amount of technical skill, right? You need to
Hmm.
be able to write a SQL query.
Hmm.
And if you can't do that, then you can't ask that question. You need somebody to do it for you. And so we thought, if we could just eliminate the technical barrier to working with data and just allow smart, curious people to explore data on their own, we could greatly increase the percentage of decisions that are made informed by data.
Yeah.
Um,
So is what Data Wisp does, is it that step between the PM that's saying I wonder and actually writing out the SQL queries and pulling the data and then getting it back, or how, like, where do you play in that stack?
So essentially, Datawisp is the platform. Wispy is our this is Wispy. Wispy is our AI agent,
Mhm.
and think of Wispy as like a junior data analyst, right? A junior data scientist, right? Anytime that you would email someone and then have to wait 2 weeks, you could just ask Wispy and get your answer in a few seconds. And so obviously for like complicated questions, you probably still need to talk to a human, but for simple stuff, or for even medium stuff, you can just ask Wispy and get an answer in a few seconds. And so we try to focus on making Wispy feel and act and talk like a real person. So it doesn't feel like you're talking to ChatGPT as much. Um,
Yeah, can we see Wispy in action?
Absolutely. Wispy is live in our product right now, so I can do that. I have no idea how to share screen in this, but
Oh,
present, yeah,
yeah.
here.
Mhm.
Share screen. Oh, this. Okay, hold on. I think I got it.
Okay, I'm
Wait.
gonna add your shared thing into the stage. Can I add
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
You can add it now. Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. So this is Datawisp, and this is Wispy. So I'll just show you. I have some data already in here. It's like fake data from a fake scooter company. But
Mhm.
assuming that in this scooter company you have an app and you use it to book a scooter near you, and then you go ride that scooter a set distance, and then you get off, right?
Mhm.
So this is kind of like the data that we have in here. Wispy automatically suggests some questions that you can ask, but you can write your own questions. So I'm going to ask here, what percentage of searches lead to rides? I'm going to ask for a chart. And so Wispy takes a few seconds to think about it and give the answer. This usually takes a minute.
Mhm.
There we go. So based on the data, 23% of searches lead to rides. Okay, and I can say break this down by city, and it'll show me for each city that we're active how this compares. And then you can see that in
Hmm.
London,
Mhm.
It's London is kind of trailing New York and Phoenix. So this is where you go, huh? I wonder why that is, and you could start asking a bunch of different questions to try to figure out why this is so low. Obviously, this is a demo, so I know why. So I'm just gonna ask why. So show search distance by city. Show average search distance by city. And so this is one of the questions that you might ask yourself. You might go, well, maybe they're too far, and then you can see the scooters in average in London are way further from the customers than they should be. Um, and so you could say, well, show this weekly as a line chart to try to figure out what the trend is, so or
Mhm.
when this happened or whatever. And then now you see that based on this, it actually is becoming a problem over time, whereas it didn't start a problem.
Mhm.
So now as a, product manager, whatever, you could go, okay, what could be causing these scooters to drift away over time? And so maybe the answer is the team that's supposed to put them back at the end of the night is like not putting them back, and so they're just kind of spreading out. So now this is like an actionable like KPI for you, is like this number here, and you
Mhm.
want to monitor it, and you want to be able to do stuff that brings it down. So now you can say, hey, I want to add this to my dashboard, and I'm going to pick my scooter company dashboard, and then when I go to my dashboards and I go to my scooter company dashboard, I can see the chart that I just made. It's right here.
Very cool. And
Um,
how does all this work, Mo? Like, are you using some Gen AI, or is this your own stuff, or a combination?
so I can stop sharing screen.
Mhm.
Um, So this works basically a combination of some proprietary stuff that we've done and some, good old chat GPT.
Mhm.
Essentially, you type your question. We send your question along with a bunch of other things to ChatGPT.
Mhm.
ChatGPT returns some code. We do some processing and stuff, and then we display the answer for you.
Got it. And what's the setup process like? Let's make believe that a company has stuff spread across a whole bunch of different places.
Yeah, yeah.
What's that like getting going?
It's pretty simple. So you can import data from any number of different sources. So if you've got an Excel spreadsheet, you can just drag and drop that. But if you've got a SQL database or maybe Snowflake or Redshift, we have connectors for the most common data types. And then if you've got something a little unusual or maybe that's just not on the list, you can always talk to us and we can make it work. And then once your data is in, um, as you saw when I ask Wispy, I can just choose from a list the things that I want to ask questions about. So I can say these tables I want to be considered when I ask this question,
Mhm.
and it'll ask based on that data.
Cool. And when did you start the company, Mo?
So we started this company in late 2021 is when we had our like proof of concept.
Uh-huh.
And then I would say summer 2022 is when we raised our seed round. We've been building since then. We launched Wispy like officially in January. Since then we've just been, selling.
Yeah. Also, that's so cool. You started the company pre-chat GPT,
Yep.
and then now we're in the middle of it. Like, how did the
So
the
I can
product
actually
change? Yeah.
I need to share again because I
Yeah.
need to show you um, what we've been working on. But essentially, our mission has always been to make data more accessible.
Mhm.
AI makes that a lot easier, but pre AI, what you'll notice is to get to this, the AI used these blocks here.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that's kind of unique to Datawisp is you can follow along to see what the AI did to get that results, and it's in plain
Mhm.
English. It's not in
Mhm.
SQL. So I can see here that we started out with this data set. We rounded the timestamp to weeks. We grouped by city and by week
Mm.
and calculated the average distance, right? And then we made a chart out of it.
Mhm.
So I know this is what I want, even though I'm totally non-technical and I can't write or read SQL.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
this is actually what we started with. So I can do this like freehand. if I want. So I can scooter search events, and then I could say, hey, I only want to look at events
Right.
where the city equals London. And
Okay.
now you can see that these are only showing London events. So you can write this freehand, and that's kind of what Datawisp started out as.
Got it.
But now it's a really cool way to basically understand what the AI is doing. And now we have this like condensed version that just shows what it's doing. Before it used to be open like this all the time because you could edit them.
Yeah. And then can you switch back and forth? Can you start with Wispy and then kind of tweak it on your own?
Absolutely. So that's kind of the point. So when you get to here, you can say, "Hey, thanks very much, Wispy. I'll take over from here." And then
Mhm.
you could say, "Hey, well, actually, I want this by months instead of,
Yeah.
and so well, this data only has 2 months, but I could say I want this by days. Oh, there's actually no days in here. Oh, days is here. Okay, cool. And now I have it by day. So,
Nice. Very cool.
yep.
So, what's been the market response so far? You just launched a few months ago. So, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. We have a very like busy like demo pipeline, so I'm
Mhm.
giving like way more of these demos every day than I care for. But but that's good. Um, in general, stuff like this has a, I mentioned we launched in January. Companies are just starting to think about, AI adoption and what that entails,
Mhm.
and privacy and security and all that stuff. So there's a bit of work that needs to be done up front to kind of like reassure everyone that their data is safe, that we're not doing anything that would be a privacy concern, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. But people are really interested in this. We're demoing all sorts of businesses, software companies. We have like a cable company, a church that is using our software. It's really, it's applicable across a real wide set of industries.
What kinds of questions is the church asking?
They have a lot of like financial statements and stuff, and so a church accepts donations. For example, if they want to know who their biggest donors are or who did what, or there's a lot of
Mm.
data that you can dig into there.
Yeah.
I actually have a call with the church next week to dig into some of their data. So I'd have a better idea then. They just kind of
Yeah.
signed up on their own, so I'm not entirely sure.
That's super cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about how you envision like this working from a product manager's perspective. I would
Absolutely.
imagine, the ideal happy case is like the PM starts kind of inquiring. He's curious. They're curious. They're interrogating the data. Wispy helps do that faster, and there's these aha moments, and that
Mhm.
leads to insights that drive the roadmap that produce great results. We were both kidding at the beginning of the call that a lot of times PMs don't use much data to make decisions. Have you encountered any um, you know insights about how that process works? Because you're kind of there are some PMs that are big believers in their intuition and conviction and vision, and maybe they're saying, hey, right. So how do you balance that with
um,
staying true to
I th-
the data?
I think. Datawisp is a tool that they have in addition to their intuition, right? So we're not
Mhm.
saying don't trust your gut and do everything based off what Datawisp doesn't tell you what to do. Datawisp just shows you data that you want to see, right? So
Mhm.
it's not in a sense it's not replacing your intuition with data. It's kind of following your intuition and checking to see if it's reinforced by data.
Mhm.
Obviously, a good product manager is in their job because they know what they're doing and they know how to go through that cycle. And what Datawisp does is facilitate them to kind of like gut check, decisions they want to make. Or so I'll give you an example, and this is actually a Datawisp example. So when we were making Wispy, back when everything was manual and we were building Wispy, we didn't know how long people would be willing to wait for Wispy to return an answer. So we
Mhm.
had two Wispies, and it was slow Wispy and fast Wispy. And fast Wispy gave you an answer really quick, and slow Wispy gave you probably a much better answer, but it took twice to or three times as long.
Mhm.
And we just said give half the people slow Wispy and give half the people fast Wispy, right?
Mhm.
That means that half of your users get a worse version of the product, and you just have to wait to see which one it is.
Mhm.
Right? And so what we did actually was we ended up just looking at data of how long people were waiting before they abandoned the query. And
Mhm.
then so we found like the amount of time
Right.
that people are willing to wait. And so we just made sure that whatever version of Wispy we gave people, it finished in less than that amount of time because we didn't want people abandoning searches. Um,
Yeah.
and Moritz, my CTO, and I were on a call, and we were discussing, well, how long should we? And then we said, let's just look at data. And so in Datawisp, in the manual version, we pulled up the data that we had about searches and stuff, and we
Mhm.
we looked at it. Um,
Yeah.
so that's, I mean, I think that's a perfect example of not data doing your job for you, but data helping you do your job more effectively.
Yeah, I'm curious, given all of the access to important data that Wispy has, could you ask it like, well, what interesting things are noteworthy that I should be aware of today?
You can.
Yeah.
So um, again, this is I can show you this. Oh, we're back on the share screen. Okay, so I'll go here. So when you ask Wispy a question, so here I'll just clear this out because it kind of caches.
Mhm.
But I'll pick this, right. What automatically by itself it starts suggesting these. What is the average distance per ride, or what is the
Mhm.
distribution of is there a relationship between the distance traveled and the ride duration? That's pretty silly, but there is.
Mhm.
Assuming that people travel at scooter speed. um, but we also have a new feature that we're building where automatically it just generates a big dashboard for you
Ah.
based on what
Mhm.
it thinks are some interesting trends. And then you can, I don't know why this one is taking so long. Sometimes it's but based on trends that it sees in the data, it'll generate like 10 different charts for you, and you can kind of
Mhm.
look at them. And then if something sparks your interest, you can like dig into that in more detail. Um, yeah, I have no idea why this one.
That's fine. The demo gods will always
it
get us.
it happens, yeah.
Would the
Um,
would the dashboard change over time, or is it like, hey, it thinks based on the structure of the data, these are the 10 charts you always care about? Or would it say like, oh, on Thursday, it's gonna suggest different charts because it noticed something weird happening on Tuesday and Wednesday?
So right now it's just a big red button and you push
Right.
it and it just goes dashboard. But and in using the scooter demo, one of the charts that made was that scooter distance one. Remember when we said why is the
Mhm.
distance so much higher?
Mhm.
So that's one of the charts it came up with. And so if you were a PM working on this, you could say, oh, that's weird, and then you could dig
Mhm.
into that and find the trend that we saw. Right. So this is kind of where we want Datawisp to be something that sparks like creativity and exploration, where you're able to dig and answer questions and use it that way.
I love it.
Rather than just to track, because typically dashboards are just used for, I have these 5 metrics I care about. I want to see them every day, right? And that's not Datawisp can do that, but it's not like why we built Datawisp.
Yeah, 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 totally makes sense. Well, let's we're running towards the end of the interview. I want to ask you some kind of rapid fire questions, Mo.
Sure.
Um, what's the biggest lesson you learned so far building Datawisp as a founder?
The biggest lesson I learned, um, focus. Be very focused in what your goals are and who your target market is and what you're building and why you're building it for them. Um, with something like Datawisp, it's so easy to have
Mhm.
countless features, right? It's so easy to be like, well, the charts need to be able to be different colors, so we need to enable them to change the chart color. And the dashboards, we should be able to move the charts around. And in the import, we should support this data type and that data type. And uh, there's like endless features that you can add to something like this. And especially when you're a startup, like no matter how good our charts are, they're never going to be as good as Tableau's charts, right?
Mhm.
So it's just the understanding that we're not competing with Tableau on charts. We're competing with Tableau on and understanding what that is and
Yeah.
focusing on that. That's the biggest lesson.
Love it. If you could go back in time as a founder of Datawisp and you could make one different decision, what would you do
We
differently?
we we don't play this game here. It's too many. It's honestly, it's every day at the end of the day, I go, oh man, here's like five things I would have done differently today. I think when you work in startups, like, you just have to accept that that's how it is. You're always going to feel some sort of, oh man, if only I'd done this differently. But we like to we just like to take those things and learn from them, and going forward, maybe not make those same mistakes again, or um, just apply that positively going forward instead of thinking about it backwards. Biggest lessons that we've learned. So to rephrase your question a little
Mhm.
bit, the biggest lessons that we've learned are probably around, being focused on what problem you're trying to solve, and not just what problem, but who you're solving it for. So am I solving this problem for game designers, or for accountants, or for, because there's so many people that work with data, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I would say. I would say focus on feature, and also focus on target customer, like, right from the beginning. Even
And
if it's something that, even so, Datawisp, we think, is something legitimately that can be used by anyone at some point,
mhm.
right? But you don't become Excel by focusing on everyone from day one, right? When you're a six-person startup, you have to be very focused, and cater, because you can only make so much marketing content. You can only be on so many podcasts, right? And so you kind of have to, like, focus your efforts into a group that makes sense.
Yeah, and who do you see as your ideal customer right now?
So we are right now targeting mid-size software companies,
Mhm.
um, largely. So I would say, like, B2C apps, B2B SaaS, and, like, video games.
Mhm.
The reason for that is, on the smaller end, their business is not complex enough. They don't have anything to analyze. On the really big end, they all have custom in-house stuff for analytics and big data science teams, and whatnot. And so you have this big, as soon as they get their, like, Series A round, to, like, right before you reach Uber status, that part of the spectrum, I think Datawisp can be successful in. Um,
Got it. Yeah, that's great. I'm sure there's a lot of people that'll be watching this who fit that criteria. What do you maybe my last question for you, Mo, is I've noticed in the past that the the PMs that are really data driven and they just love going into SQL and they get
mhm.
joy from finding new things. Um, they definitely have massive impact at larger companies where you have a lot of data. I've seen sometimes they might struggle when they go to an earlier stage company because there just isn't that much data. So you're not going to
Yep.
do like a 1% test when you don't have that many users.
Yep.
What advice would you have for PMs that are at companies that are smaller or they're working on products that are, really, really early and there isn't a ton of data, but you still don't want to just go completely uncut. Like, how do you balance that?
So there's a few other things that we use. So we don't just fly blind until we
Mhm.
have, like, amazing analytics, right? There's some in between steps. So um, one, I would just say, as soon as you have a working product, track everything. It's worth it. A lot of companies, I think, postpone that too much. They, like, wait too long to start tracking data.
Mhm.
I think as soon as you have a working product that's good enough to sell, you should start tracking everything. That's number one.
Mhm.
Um, Number two, there's a few other things that you can do. So one thing we did a lot of before we started tracking all this stuff is user testing. So we actually use a website called User Testing, free plug. And what they do is they source people to come in and
Hmm.
do tasks. So we would say, hey, here's a data set. I want you to do XYZ with it using Datawisp. And then they'll sit there and do your task and you can just watch them. Right.
Hmm.
And so that's a video, but you can turn that video into data. Um, you can kind of quantify like a video by just saying, okay, how many times did they struggle? How many buttons could they not find, or whatever. And so you have an idea of how good your UI UX is. You have an idea of how easy the tool is to use. At the end, you can make them rank certain things. So you can be like rank ease of use, rank whatever, right? And then you can say, okay, we need to focus on UI UX because people could not find this button when they were looking for it, right? So that's some of the stuff that we did earlier.
Makes
um
a ton of sense. Yeah, I've used.
yeah,
I remember using user testing back in the day, and I found them super helpful, especially if you don't
yeah,
have resources to have like a full on UXR team and doing lab studies all the
yeah.
time.
And sometimes, man, I would watch those user tests and just be pulling my hair out and be like,
Oh,
you
I
idiot.
know.
You idiot. Okay, you can't find this. And then we realize, you know what? It's just poor UX.
Yeah.
We should put this button somewhere where it's more obvious. And so eventually we got to a point where Datawisp users would come in and they would like upload their data, and then they would navigate to the right section and they click Wispy and they start
Hmm.
asking questions, and we're like, oh man, it's so good now. Like
Yeah.
everything just works.
Yeah.
Everything's in the right place.
That's
So
great. That's great. Um, Mo, it's been fantastic having you on the Fireside PM podcast. Was there anything else that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up? It's been a great conversation.
um yeah, I mean, just let you guys know where to find me
Hmm.
if you want to chat about any of this stuff in more detail. I'm on Twitter at electronicmo, also at Datawisp, and on LinkedIn. Obviously, you can find me just using my name. So happy to chat about any data related questions, or any how do we use more data in project management questions. Um,
That's great.
and then if
What does it
anybody,
cost
sorry.
currently for anybody who wants to
Datawisp.
launch
So
that?
we
Yeah.
have two plans. Our pro plan, which is more appropriate for business, is about $100 a month
Hmm.
per seat. And then because everything runs on your own infrastructure, there's no like compute cost or anything. It just goes on to your Snowflake bill or whatever.
Hmm. Love it. Is there a trial program or? Yeah.
There's a 2-week free trial. So
All
if
right.
you book a demo with us on the website, quick chat, and then you can start using it and see how it works for you.
Love it. Well, thanks again for coming on, and I hope folks check out Datawisp and wish you all the best, Mo. It looks like you're making great progress.
Thanks, Tom. Really love being on here and chatting with you. So,
Take care, buddy. See
yeah,
ya.
bye.
All right. Cool company. Um, and it is interesting how tools like Datawisp, they could kind of democratize uh basically the kind of SQL ceiling, where you often see in product teams like the PMs that are most comfortable pulling data and analyzing it, they're just able to make product recommendations with much more conviction and credibility than the equally smart PMs who aren't as comfortable with SQL. And so maybe tools like Datawisp can kind of allow every PM to become an expert, more of an expert around the data and the customer. And fun kind of journey they've been on. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna build a visual way to construct SQL queries, to now like, let's just use ChatGPT, and then you can still tune it and tweak it after. So yeah, that's kind of cool just from a startup point of view, seeing the pre-GPT data wisp and then the post-GPT data wisp. I'd be curious to hear about what you all think in the comments. Like, would you use this product? Why or why not? And what do you think is the future of companies like Datawisp, who clearly have a big GPT kind of component to them, but it also seems like they are adding a lot of stuff before and after. So let me know what you think. If you found this conversation with Mo useful, best thing you can do is like and share. That's a great way to help this podcast grow and live stream grow. And then if you're interested in one-on-one coaching with me, if you're PM, you can check out tomleungcoaching.com. And then I'm also teaching some classes on product management on maven.com/Tom L. So see you guys next time. I have an amazing show coming up on Monday where I'm going to have a long interview with a former office mate of mine back when we were at Microsoft in the early 2000s. And he's now, then he went to a bunch of startups, including like Wish. He's also been an early employee at Facebook. And then now he's a senior director at Roblox in product management. So that's Richard Sim. And we'll be talking live on Monday at 5 p.m. if you want to join us live. And then also check out my Substack, because all of my Fireside PM interviews, I then summarize using a little bit of Gen AI, but I do a summarization in text of the full interview with like the key takeaways, and you can subscribe for free to my Substack. That's the Fireside PM Substack. So see you guys later, and let's get back to work.